Another thing you learned, and I've learned from previous conversations with you, is about the whole notion of reincarnation, which was not something at the time that you necessarily gave weight to as a Catholic priest. And this is real. This comes up in your life as turning out to be rather important. Right. Because you turn into essentially a renegade or rebel priest.
Yes, very much so.
Let's talk about how that happened before we start going into your book, which is just amazing. So how did you learn about reincarnation through the Africans?
So the peoples I lived with 3 different Kalenjin tribes, the Kipsigis, the Tugen and the Nandi. And all of them had this fascinating system where a child was given 3 different names at birth. The first name had to do with the circumstances of the birth. So if I asked a child, for instance, Kigoreno, what is your name? And she says to me, Kigoreno Jerubet, I knew immediately she was born during a famine, just by the name. If I asked a little boy, Kigoreno, what is your name? And he said to me, Kigoreno Kipchirchir, I knew immediately that there was a lot of problems around the birth and that people were fussing about, that it was a dangerous time. So the circumstances of the birth was the first name that was given. So I knew immediately the circumstances. The second name was called the porridge name, Gainetap Musarek, and it was the name that only the mother could use of the child. And if the child was being obstreperous in some way, the mother would use a special name and the child would immediately quieten down. I saw warriors come back from cattle raids, fired up with the battle of a cattle safari, and the mother would use the porridge name and the boy would quieten down immediately. That was the second name. And the third name, they would bring in an elder from in the tribe and to name out all of the ancestors of this particular baby. And when the baby sneezed, they said, that's the ancestor who's coming back. So they're recycling, they're coming back. And so I thought this was just a really interesting, quaint custom.
Yes, but it ended up taking on more meaning than that.
Much deeper meaning. Well, I came to the States in 1987 to pursue a PhD in psychology. And early on, I did a seminar with a woman called Barbara Finn Dyson on what's called perinatal issues. And it's based on Stan Groff's work.
Stanley Groff. Yes, and I interviewed him many, many years ago and went through the workshop that I think you're going to be talking about.
Well, I went through this workshop, and the idea was that he talked about this idea of basic perinatal matrices, which was a belief system that there are 4 critical stages to the birth process. If I think the first may have been the contractions as they begin. The second is the baby turning to engage the head in the birth canal. The third is squeezing through the birth canal, and the fourth is coming out and having the umbilical cord cut and all these bright lights. And he claimed that adult neurotic behaviour, correlates very closely to the particular period at which the child experienced the most difficulty during the birthing process. So I'm expecting I'm going to experience this. And everybody in the group, there were 23 of us doing this workshop, everybody in the group had the experience of experiencing a difficulty during their own birth process. And I'm expecting the same thing when it comes to my turn. Instead, I had this experience of being a young Tibetan woman giving birth to her firstborn child. And it was so real, I literally had pains in my thighs for 4 or 5 days afterwards. And this totally rocked me because it was an experience. And I know from epistemology that there are 3 ways we know stuff. The first one is an authority figure tells us and we believe them. The second one is we experience stuff for ourselves. And the third one is, we figure stuff out on our own. And so here was an experience I could not doubt. It was absolutely real. And subsequently through self-hypnosis and through visionary experiences, I've recovered memories from about 11 other lifetimes. And so I had no doubt whatsoever that for a whole bunch of reasons, psychological reasons, theological reasons, sociological reasons, reincarnation is probably the most important element in the trajectory of a soul in its learning to grow. Because you can't be prejudiced if you subscribe to reincarnation and you realize that whatever position I'm in now as a white Irish male, I've been in all of the other configurations in past lifetimes. So to be prejudiced against anybody in any configuration is absolutely meaningless. And the best way I know to let go of prejudice is to come to the realization, I don't just kind of think, what is it like to be that person? To be female or to be a slave in Africa in the 1300s, or to be a shaman, in North America in the 9th century. But to have been in those places and experienced life in those places, I can't be prejudiced at this stage from being Catholic or being Irish or being male. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know of any other way that it solves so many theological problems so many sociological problems, so many psychological problems, and it does away completely with prejudices of all kinds.
I think that's why I resonated so deeply.